Good morning, everybody. A very warm welcome for those of you joining us today for today's webinar on digitalization in Ethiopia, specifically looking at talent and entrepreneurship. Before we officially start today's session, I will give people some more time to join today. We will start talking already about some practicalities of today's session. So, as you can see that we have a division between speakers and participants. So that's why we turned off the cameras and the mics to make sure that we really focus on the session itself. Today's webinar will be recorded. And where we usually have recordings of speakers, today we have a fully live and hopefully also a very interactive session. This means that we will have a panel discussion where we have certain statements where the panelists can also respond. But apart from that, we also want to give the opportunity to the participants to also partake in today's discussion. So as such, if you have any questions, please do address them in the Q&A box or in the chat, and specifically also mention if you would like to ask this question in person. And we will then unmute you so that you can be part of the discussion. Of course, given the time, etc., we will have to manage it a little bit carefully, but I am at least hoping that we're going to have a very, very pleasant session today. And with that being said, I would like to thank the Netherlands Embassy to be very well represented today. I would like to give the floor today to open today's session to Your Excellency, Mr. Henk-Jan Bakker, who is the ambassador of the Embassy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Mr. Henk-Jan?
Yes, and a very good morning to all of you. I always get a little nervous when the word excellency is used, because it implies something. It implies that I'm excellent at many things, which I'm not, and certainly not at IT. But nevertheless, a few words from my side to underline the importance of the agenda of today. Digitalization, in our view, is a driver of innovation and economic activity, and innovative technologies can help countries like Ethiopia to achieve breakthroughs in solving both societal challenges, but also offer opportunities to leap forward. This is recognized by the Ethiopian government as well. There is a Digital Ethiopia 2025 strategy in which the ICT sector is prioritized for its potential for job creation, for Forex, and for inclusive growth. Next week, Addis Ababa hosts the Internet Governance Forum, and I think that is no coincidence either. And as the Netherlands, we recognize the significance of the digital sector in terms of catalyzing overall economic development in Ethiopia as well. There is another plan, the National Plan for Job Creation, which predicts that with the right investment, the ICT sector could employ 126,000 people across the industry and a possible 240,000 other jobs, which would be created indirectly. Now, this is all on paper. Or on your screen, if you will. And to quote one of the losing coaches in the World Cup this week, he said, "On paper, we had a very good plan, but football is played on grass." So the implementation of all these plans is at the end of the day what really counts. And we stand ready to help the Ethiopian government with the implementation of those plans. The digital economy, additionally, is also very important for our youth economic environment agenda globally. As the Netherlands, we invest 60 million euros on an annual basis supporting programs that improve the economic prospects of young people and women in focus regions, which are not all countries, but countries in the Middle East, North Africa, and Sub-Saharan Africa, including the Horn of Africa. The Netherlands is, of course, always in the top of the most innovative and competitive economies, and we believe we have a lot to offer in terms of realizing economic opportunities of the ICT sector. And I'm sure some of the speakers today will go into that particular point as well. So with those few words, I'm happy to hand over back to the real specialists. Thank you very much, Trade, for organizing this webinar on this very important topic. And I wish you a very fruitful exchange the rest of the morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for opening today's session. And also very nice to hear about that the Dutch actually also have a strong role to play. And hopefully this is going to be the kickoff as well, to also give some of these activities between Dutch and Ethiopian digitalization business development some more body in that sense. So thank you again for opening today's session and your kind words. So again, thank you everybody as well. A very warm welcome for those of you who have just joined. So today we're going to have hopefully a very interesting and also interactive session about the digitalization in Ethiopia, specifically where we will talk about talent and entrepreneurship. So for today's program, hopefully it's going to be a series of different topics, because we do see a lot of opportunities on this landscape. Today we will have a very fine selection, I believe, of both Dutch companies and also Ethiopian companies in this sector. And what we will do today is we will have several panelists that will present something more about themselves, what they do as an organization, and also how they view the landscape. After which we will have panel discussions where we have certain statements and questions that the panelists will reflect upon. What we would like to again reiterate today is that we want to have an interactive session. So for those of you who have just joined, if you have any questions that you would like to be discussed during the panel session, or if you would even want to be part of this discussion, please state your question in the Q&A and in the chat box, specifically also mentioning if you could be part of this panel discussion. And then we will make a selection afterwards, and we will unmute your microphone so you can also engage in this discussion. So with that being said, thanks again for joining. We have very interesting speakers from both the private sector as well as the government. We will start today's session as well with Mr. Fakadu Getahun. He's a senior strategic advisor of the Ministry of Innovation and Technology. Then we'll also have a presentation of Ms. Rahel Boon, of which I am very excited that she is joining today, because she has all the boots on the ground experience, moving from the Netherlands, setting up a business in Ethiopia related to business process outsourcing. And then from also more of an entrepreneurial perspective, we have Lensa and Thijs joining from Venture Meda, who will also more reflect on the entrepreneurial landscape. And last, but certainly not least, we have Mr. Zwede Wurfbaan, the founder also of Nedamco Ethiopia, who has a lot of things to say about the talent and the future and the positive future that Ethiopia holds. So with that being said, as you probably know, my name is Alexander René de Waard, and I'm your moderator for today. I am the coordinator of Trade Ethiopia. As Trade, we do really want to always stress how important the Dutch are for the Ethiopian economy. So as many people actually don't know, I would like to reiterate that the Netherlands is one of the largest export destinations of Ethiopian commodities. And actually, they're the largest investor from the European Union. And although that the majority of these 85 Dutch companies are active in the agricultural sector, we do see as well that there are new entrants in the digitalization sector. And we're also hoping to attract more businesses to do business with Ethiopian in this sector. Because as the ambassador already mentioned, the digitalization sector has a lot of potential to create more than 35,000 jobs, to surpass that number. And we also see that there is a lot of possibilities and potential for more business development. So as trade, this is also our mandate. That is also why we are hosting today's webinar. It is our mandate to increase sustainable business between Ethiopia and the Netherlands. So this means that we are very dedicated to attract new businesses and set up new businesses also with companies that are already here. We are here to support the already established businesses that could be both Ethiopian companies doing business with the Netherlands or Dutch companies doing business in Ethiopia. And we are also here basically to support the embassy whenever it comes to their economic activities. So as trade, we have many different activities that we engage in. I will not go into too much depth about that, but it is in our interest to attract more sustainable trade and investment, and also that applies for the digitalization sector. We see that there is a lot of potential. That's why we engaged in a quick scan to understand what the potential would be. And today we are hosting this webinar. And hopefully, when it comes to the next steps after this webinar, we are really going to, so how can we help? We would like to really push this sector forward. So after this webinar, we will send also a questionnaire with a link where you can reflect on not only today's webinar, but also express your interest. So if you are interested in doing business with Ethiopia and with the Netherlands, please indicate that in the survey, and we will personally reach out to you to discuss further about how can we help. So with that being said, and without further ado, I would like to move towards the presentations. First off, we will start with Ato Fakadu Getahun. As we already said, we are very excited that we have somebody from the Ministry of Innovation and Technology to also be representing today and share more about the digitalization landscape of Ethiopia. Ato Fakadu.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation. And, I'm really glad to say a few words on the top of what the ambassador has already indicated. It will be in which my starting point will be the Digital Ethiopia 2025. It will be used to say a few words about the talent. The next slide, please. So, as you know, the context for the Digital Ethiopia 2025 is the homegrown economic agenda, which has set a plan of creating more jobs and making the country to be sufficient enough with foreign exchange and having a kind of inclusive, economy. And in this landscape, as you know, inclusivity is very much important, and to have inclusion, there is a need to have a digital literacy. The next slide, please. So, digitalization is very much important, and everything starts with digitizing the analog data we have into electronic format, and then creating some kind of process digitization so that the business process will be very much automated. And then finally, there is a need for business digitization so that the companies will serve the users and their community in a smooth, smoothness. Next slide. What the digital transformation has recognized is identifying the main pillars, the main cross-cutting, foundations to realize the main agenda of the government, in which the transformation agenda is endorsed by the Council of Ministers, in which main pillars are identified, like infrastructure, digital system, the need for finance, and the core element, which is people, is identified. When we say infrastructure, it's not only about connectivity, it is also about the need for electricity, so that the machines we have will work. With respect to digital system, what is needed is irrespective of the service that is going to be needed or that's going to run, that will serve the nation and many more. There are foundational systems which are needed, like identifying who is going to be served, like using some kind of ID. The need for payments that will get integrated, including the fintechs and others. When we work on the digital environment, there is always a challenge, and security is the main aspect. Cybersecurity is there. Whoever is going to be, served is partly it is about, government services. It could be to the citizen, it could be to the business, it could be to the other government. So e-government is another aspect. Finance is very much important. This will be needed from two aspects. As the main or the core of this panel is about, talent and entrepreneurship. Startups will come into picture. They need financing, which most of the time the startups are financing from self. But aside from that, there is a need to get or avail finance to the private sector. For all this, the main element is the people who are going to work on the system. So a digital skill building is very much important. It is highly recognized in the strategy. The skill building has got two sides. One is building the skill of those who are within the universities. In our case, the curriculum has been changed. The mindset has been changed. For instance, the Ministry of Education has set a plan and taken an action to include ICT as the main course, starting from the grade 7. Everyone in the university is taking course related to ICT, aside from those who are working on ICT. So these are the main elements, and aside from that, the glue for all is having legal and policies and regulations that will bind everything. The next slide, please. So for each of the main elements, the existing situation has been identified in the form of diagnosis, whether it is through infrastructure, the enabling system, the applications and the ecosystem. So what is lacking is identified, and how to identify, how to deal with this challenge is already considered. For instance, the need for a mobile money has been identified in the enabling system aspect, and as you know, the National Bank has rectified the use of mobile banking, including the fintechs who will take part in this ecosystem. The next slide for the benefit of time. So aside from the main pillars, we have identified as well the main sectors that will help us in including creating new jobs, increasing the foreign currency, the forex and inclusivity. Those sectors are related to agriculture, modernizing the agriculture by adding values, having or creating or modernizing, you can say, the manufacturing sector by creating a value chain in it. And the third is in the ICT-enabled services. This will be related very much to one of the panelists who's working on business process outsourcing. As you know, business process outsourcing is one of the areas which is recognized by the government in creating jobs and foreign currency. And the last is, we say Ethiopia is a land of opportunity, a land for tourism. So if we invest on tourism through digitalization, the main objectives are set will be satisfied. And aligned with these four pathways, different projects have been identified. The next slide, please.
Thank you, Mr. Fakadu. May I ask you to move towards the wrap up? I think that there are many interesting items as well that we want to discuss during this panel session.
Yeah, I will finalize in here. For this panel, the main part is talent. So talent will be developed in one hand in the higher educational institutions, like 300 and something. And we have got few public universities, like 50 of them, who are training close to 1 million, students. ICT is taken as a core element so that the graduates will create their own jobs directly and indirectly through startup and the like, so that the main agenda we said in the strategy is support. Out of the 50, higher educational institutions, 90% of them, which is close to 45 of them, are providing ICT and ICT related, training. So the pool of students who have graduated will work not only internally in the country, but also outside, because the curriculum we have is developed through standardization following the standards set by IEEE and ASEAN, so that they can work as a software developer, administrator, programmer, and the like. If I have time, I can continue, or I can reflect further during the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ato Fakado. I think that indeed we have quite some questions listed about this, and I'm very pleased to see that you have these numbers very concretely. Also very nice to see that there are very specific opportunities related to e-governance, but also I think with digital skills, it's good to see this bridge. So thank you so much. Ato Fakado, may I ask you to mute your mic when we move towards the next session? So again, with that being said, we would move towards Mrs. Rahel, who is the CEO of R&D Group. Ms. Rahel?
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, can you?
Yes, we can hear you very loud and clear.
Yes, so I was waiting for the presentation. Now, this is just to give you an impression of some of our work in Ethiopia. You can go to the next slide. So R&D actually started in 2010 with a vision to support the ecosystem in Ethiopia in an area of entrepreneurship and digitalization. We were probably way too early for our time. Because back in those days, the infrastructure was not there. The image of Ethiopia on a global space was kind of challenging. We entered partnership with a Dutch-based company called Ortec, and my company in the Netherlands, where we actually wanted to show a kind of showcase for sustainable business development, not specifically serving the nation through NGO approach, but really see how we can drive entrepreneurship and also become a purpose-driven organization. We started small within a university in Ethiopia to actually test the market. And that was our story. And so far we have been able to set standard on how to set up a professional organization which actually serves the professionals in Ethiopia to become more self-aware and become a more high-performing teams within their organization or as an entrepreneur. So in a sense, we do that in 4 different ways. We started as trying to connect Ethiopian talents with digital jobs. Because we saw the opportunity for young people coming out of university having the potential to actually serve international organization remotely. In the past, it was easy to explain what we do. However, now remote jobs becoming very kind of known. It's easier to explain the reason why we thought that Ethiopians can actually participate in a global workforce. We do that also through developing the skills of our internal and corporate clients through training, mentorship, and other relevant interaction where we provide space for people to develop themselves continuously. We work with Ethiopian locally based, generally majority of the work we did was really for foreign companies, but we saw opportunity to also stimulate entrepreneurship activities in Ethiopia, which in a sense actually also will create the jobs that are needed. That's actually our main goal, is to make sure that majority of Ethiopians actually hold dignified jobs in their own country. We saw small and medium enterprises being the catalyst. So we provide various solutions to support the ecosystem in that sense. And we work with Dutch companies mainly, expanding to other companies to help them set up organizations that are responsible in a sense, which means we don't want companies to come only based on providing the highest profit to shareholders, but also become more involved in supporting the stakeholders in sense. So we do that in various areas. We have a training company that we provide training for corporate clients, but also help and as a supporting department for other activities in terms of our entrepreneurship acceleration solutions. Obviously, today is focused on IT outsourcing, where we are really kind of the pioneer, but we do that in various areas. So I'll explain later on. We do consulting very much specific, mostly related to sustainable business, corporate social responsibility, known human resource management, because we work a lot with people, and we provide strategy in entering the African continent as a potential investment area. And our entrepreneurship activities are really working on organizations that have potential to grow with innovative solution. We provide them with mentorship, training, matchmaking, and various interventions to include young people into their operations. Yeah, this just to give a brief status on where we are. We have so far 130 employees, over 130 employees. We trained over 5,000, and our clients, mainly local actually, in this case, are about 200. And we work with also extended associate consultants and experts that we call up on when we need, and we continuously try to develop their skills also to meet the international standard needed. So when we come to impact outsourcing, next slide. Yeah, so we have kind of reshaped ourselves. We started as a small firm that was providing small data for a Dutch company, and we saw the big data concept growing, and we are preferred suppliers in providing quality data for machine learning AI solutions. But we also have a space where we provide qualified IT professionals placement to serve as a remote team in a sense, depending on the need of the organization. And we are now expanding to customer contact management as we see growth in the industry. So basically, we started from the Netherlands. We are also registered in the Netherlands to actually be able to serve and understand the need of Dutch companies and slash European companies. We work mostly with IT departments and obviously customer service department, HR department that are looking for a unique proposition in their hiring process. And obviously I don't have to read through all this, but the whole idea being we don't sell our solution being we provide you cheap labor. We say we provide you highly qualified, scalable talents from Ethiopia and hopefully from other African countries that can serve as your extension team and help you also to offer diversified insight into specific case. You know, the more diverse your team, the better your proposition would be. So that's our value proposition.
Thank you, Rahel. May I ask you also, I think that there is going to be a lot of questions on your proposition. May I ask you also to move towards the conclusion?
Yes, thank you. Yes, so I think this is just a repetition to what I said. It's you know, we divide our solution into three. And yeah, it's actually my final session, but I had prepared something small to give a proper overview of what is happening in the IT industry. I can briefly go through that. Yeah, the next one. Yeah. So what we are looking into, and hopefully later on there will be a lot of more questions. the future of work is changing, and I think the world is changing, probably not the same pace it needs to be. But hybrid workforce is becoming very important. It means any other organization based anywhere else working in Ethiopia with Ethiopians is not unique anymore. People are looking for generational workforce. So the senior team could be based in developed countries, but young professionals can actually join into the space. And even though AI is becoming people are becoming scared of AI, but there is still a need for human interaction. So there is possibility to grow. Go ahead. Yeah, the next slide, please. Yeah, so in general, it's just more for people who are exploring opportunity to invest in Ethiopia or Africa, is the untapped talent in Africa, obviously in Ethiopia, is something that organizations should take into consideration. A lot of young investors are actually new investors, seeing the continent as an option to invest in the IT industry much more than it used to be in an extractive industry in the past. So we have the potential to combat global talent war. And at the same time, the continent offers opportunity to invest in the country by itself, and obviously digitalization will serve for that. Yeah, some opportunities in Ethiopia that we have seen is customer service, currently being done in India, but Ethiopia offers preferable solutions in that, in terms of hospitality. I don't know if you can read through what Ethiopians are considered to be very hospitable, and they speak proper English, especially in the urban areas. There are a lot of emerging technologies that can be taught easily, and the hospitality industry that's looking for really high quality hospitable people could offer opportunities. So people interested in the area could yeah. So why Ethiopia multilingual, have very much tech savvy young people coming into the market, physical connectivity. Ethiopian Airlines, our pride, make sure that we actually at least land in Ethiopia before we leave somewhere else. So you really have easy access to your employees whenever needed. The government is working very hard on digital connectivity, and the upcoming of new telecom will support this process. And as Mr. Fakadu said, digital transformation is the agenda of the government. So that would offer opportunity for us to grow. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rahel, for your reflections. I think it's also very, for my personal reflection, I always find it very impressive to see how impact-driven R&D Group is, and especially also thank you for reiterating that it's not only about outsourcing in terms of, cheap labor, etc., but you also can reiterate and stress the quality that we can also find here, and the massive potential for Ethiopia as a BPO destination. So thank you again for that, Rahel.
Yes, welcome.
Apologies, everybody. We are moving a little bit fast-paced, but we are doing that in order to facilitate a good Q&A and a more interactive panel discussion. So with that being said, I would like to again ask everybody, if you have any question, please do mention it in the Q&A or in the chat box, also specifically stating that you would like to be part of the discussion, and we will unmute your mic. So again, if you have a question, please ask it in the chat. That being said, I would like to give the stage to Venture Meda, to Lensa and Thijs. I know that Lensa had a little bit of a microphone challenge, so I hope, Lensa, you can reflect on your business activities, and if that doesn't work, then I'll ask Thijs as well to jump in. Lensa?
So I think Lensa is having some microphone issues, but I think you can hear me clearly, right? Perfect. Thank you very much. Then I think I'll jump in and explain a little bit about Venture Meda. Venture Meda is a program implemented by ISADIS. My name is Thijs Merton. I'm the Monitoring, Evaluation, and Learning Lead at ISADIS. And it's a program in collaboration with Mint. And it's a program financed as part of Young Africa Works, which is part of MasterCard Foundation. Next slide, please. So Venture Meta is really about two pillars. The first is supporting the creation and growth of new e-commerce ventures and preparing these companies to scale in a sustainable manner and become investment ready. And then it's also about enabling the growth of existing e-commerce platforms and businesses and building local actors to be able to participate in e-commerce and growing the sector as a whole. So what we do, as I said this in Venture Meta, is four things. It's incubation of startups. Incubation is really about supporting companies that are pre-revenue or are only generating small amounts of revenue but have a minimum viable product that they can launch in the Ethiopian digital ecosystem. Then we have acceleration of companies, where we really focus on companies that are in the market, that have a product and that can grow either horizontally to other geographies or vertically by also incorporating other products and services in their value chain. We focus on strategic partnerships, which very much focuses on attracting finance and being investment ready, attracting equity, attracting debt, and thereby growing. And we also do a lot of marketing and promotion on behalf of these companies, and also the Ethiopian digital ecosystem as a whole, and promoting the sector both nationally and internationally, and putting it on the agenda of both investors, private sector, government, etc. Next slide, please. So this is the first cohort of the first incubator. We have 11 companies that you can see represented in this photo, and it goes from online tutoring companies to companies that organize events, to companies that produce products and want to sell these products online, where we support them with the digital products and services that are necessary to be able to do that and to grow. So we are very happy that we are able to work with this talented group of entrepreneurs, and we very much look forward to supporting them in their journey and growing their companies and growing the digital ecosystem in Ethiopia as a whole. Next slide, please. So if you'd like to learn more about Venture Meta, you can go to venturemeta.com, or you can reach out to Lensa or to me, and we very much look forward to the panel discussion as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Thijs. It's really exciting to see how Venture Media is there to really support the new initiatives, because I do believe that there are a lot of exciting developments and a lot of energy for new businesses, and it's good to see that you guys are there also to support and kickstart.
Definitely.
Thank you, Thijs. And I hope that Lensa can also join during the panel discussion. So with that being said, I would like to, before giving the stage to Mr. Zwede, again, if you have any questions, please do ask them in the Q&A or in the chat box, and we'll discuss them during the panel discussion. And that being said, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Zwede Wurfbaan, who is the founder of Nedamco Ethiopia.
Well, Sander, thank you very much for that introduction. And so my name is Zwede Wurfbaan. I am the founder, but more of the representative of Nedamco in Ethiopia. And Nedamco Capital is a family office of which I am part of the family. And in 2018, we started planning to do a project in Ethiopia, which we started in 2019 and has now taken over everything and everybody with 100% focus on Ethiopia. To give a little bit context, so Nedamco is an investment company from the 1990s and has been investing in technology companies until 2018, when we sold the entire portfolio, had the last exit, and said now we want to focus on something a little bit different. And that is still with the background of technology and the technology investments, because we believe in it. But as the newer generations now often do, is we wanted to combine making money and having social impact, bringing together social impact investment. So what we do in Ethiopia as Nedamco Capital is a social enterprise, a social impact investment. This is number one, 100% for profit. We are here to make money. We don't hide that in any way, but we approached it a little bit differently than normal. And then it said is, when you do business, you are essentially solving a problem. And we said, well, how can we find a social problem that we can solve with a business model? And as I've lived in Ethiopia since 2015, I've worked in the countryside, I've worked in Addis Ababa, I've had the chance to speak with and experience Ethiopia for many years before we started our business here, a truly luxury position. We said, you know, what is one of the biggest assets of Ethiopia? And that is its human capital. A government that invested so much in training these people in TVET centers, in universities, and now that they've done their job so well that the formal economy can't absorb all these highly educated talent. So at the same time, we saw another opportunity, and that is the digital transformation in the world, specifically to cloud. And the whole world is migrating to the cloud, especially during the pandemic. I mean, the pandemic has been horrible for almost any company, but our focus was 100% on cloud. So a little bit conflicting, but it couldn't have been better timing. And we said that the whole world is migrating to the cloud. But this migration, we're at step one of step one. Only 2% of all large organizations and governments have fully migrated to the cloud. And we said, well, this is where we see the future. Then in the West, especially in Europe and in the US, you have this huge talent gap. Currently in the entire world, there are about 29 million software developers and people that spend their jobs full-time in IT. That's towards 7 billion or now 8 billion people in the world, a complete mismatch. The cloud technologies is even worse because 10 years ago, cloud didn't even exist, so we're starting to talk about it. And now, last year, Google, Microsoft, and Amazon, who represent 50% of the cloud market, announced that in the next 10 years, they are together going to train 100 million people. Well, that gives a bit of an indication of the scale. The other reason why we chose cloud is that you don't need to be a software developer. You don't need to speak the coding languages. And that means that you also don't have to catch up with India, who is the biggest competitor for Ethiopia in outsourcing with experience, but you can work in a new platform and it's accessible to anyone. So what has Nedamco done? So Nedamco has made a commitment to train and employ 100,000 Ethiopian youth in these cloud technologies in the next 10 years. We started January 1st of this year and have now our first 120 employees. We're very happy with the progress. The way Nedamco does this is to we select highly qualified talent or high potential talent. We give them a full-time employment contract and then we give them training on the job. This means that we are able to give them 40 hours a week of full-time training. And they can focus 100% of their time on that. And the minimum training is 3.5 months, and the maximum training that people are on now are 15 months. So to also, because I know the time is going very quickly, and I want to put it a little bit in a bigger perspective, is so why Ethiopia? Why are we here? And I get this question all the time because Africa, people understand it's the last frontier, but why Ethiopia? Because as a Dutch person, South Africa would make sense. Around the corner, we have Nairobi, who is, let's be fair, and Kenya a few steps ahead of Ethiopia. But Ethiopia has a few things going for itself, and that is Ethiopia is moving forward with an unbelievable speed. And yes, I've been here 8 years. In the last 8 years, it's a bit of up and down, but the long-term vision, Ethiopia is moving with incredible speed. And we're not trying to relive the past, but everything is moving towards the future. And I think if you walk around in Addis Ababa, it really shows. So Ethiopia has a million people in university and TVET centers, all very well educated and now looking for job opportunity. Ethiopia is an extremely cost competitive country. But other advantages over India, for example, is the geographical location. In India, people have been doing this work for 25 years. They have options now. They don't care to work graveyard shifts from 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. in the morning. So Ethiopia is much more strategically positioned towards Europe, but even towards the east coast of the US. Then this is not a racist thing, but the Ethiopian English accent is better perceived by the Western world than the Indian accent. And I know that's not a popular thing to say, but sometimes that is just the reality. And the speed of which everything in Ethiopia is moving forward around technology. So we have the new telcos coming into the market. And I know Rahel has already touched on a few of these things. So now with Safaricom disrupting the market, Ethio Telecom is scrambling to get everything ready. When I moved to Ethiopia 2015, unfortunately, it was sometimes still a possibility that the internet would temporarily be shut off for strategic reasons that I did not get to decide. But since 2018, the internet basically has not been off. And now with Safaricom coming in and the new telco license most likely being sold next year, there will be 100% redundant internet. What you have then is 100% redundant internet, which is obviously the most important part. We have the cheapest electricity of Africa, but which is also 100% renewable energy. And that is maybe not as relevant today, but large companies like Google, Microsoft, and Amazon, the enterprises of this world in the future will only want to work with companies that have a net zero strategy. And Ethiopia is incredibly well positioned to take that role. So then we have the telcos, we have the government taking a decision to now move towards a more capitalistic economy, and the new banking license is being given. So it is a perfect storm that is kind of coming together. And yes, you should not come to Ethiopia if you want to make a quick buck and say, I'm going to come in, I'm going to be here for 2 years, I'm going to make my money, sell my company, move out. You will probably not be happy and not be successful. But if you have the long breath and you can see the possibilities here, and you have the time and energy and the resources to invest, then you can position yourself now in Ethiopia to be in an absolute pole position in the coming years towards the rest of the world. And Sander, I see yourself unmuting, so let me pause there.
Thank you so much, Reda, and thank you so much. I do have to be indeed, I really like timing, indeed. That's the Dutch side here, but I would like to thank you so much for your just your visionary and long-term kind of perspective. I think we have really a true ambassador here from the Netherlands, active in Ethiopia and also really advocating on behalf of Ethiopia. So thank you again for your optimistic outlook and also reiterating all these opportunities. I think Ato Fakado would be very proud as well of your introductions. Thank you so much. With that being said, we would now move towards the panel discussion. If you have any questions, please again add them to the chat or in the Q&A and we can discuss those. I would ask the panelists if you can turn on your microphone and if you can also turn on your video, your camera, so that everybody can see you, so that everybody will be visible during this discussion. So I think as everybody is joining here as well, we were just looking at the chat. We've prepared some questions and some discussions, but I do see that we had a question from Miss Diana van der Stelt, who is actually located in Kumasi in Ghana and is doing some work on digitalization there. And in the chat box, she is specifically asking you, Rahel, about the reflections about how the African IT digitalization landscape actually compares as well and how it competes with other countries such as India, Philippines, Eastern Europe or Brazil. So Rahel, and perhaps also afterwards the other panelists, may I ask you to reflect already on how does Ethiopia and also how does the African digitalization landscape compare when it comes to the more traditional competition from, for instance, India?
Hi. I hope you can hear me. Well, like I said, I think Africa had been very much misunderstood for the last years, with a lot of political and economic reasons that we cannot explain. The point being, Africa in general going to be the fastest growing working population in the world by 2050. Majority, almost 1/3 of employees actually will be based in Africa. So if you are thinking long term, if you are thinking I want to expand, that's how you actually engage Africans and Ethiopians in this case also in the process of globalization. That will also mean you should not consider Africa anymore as a place where we take mining projects, and then, you know, it's because people are waking up, younger generation are expecting change. So the only way you become inclusive business is when you actually include people in a very dignified and equally respected way. And that's really from high level discussion on the ground at Addis Ababa by itself, because Africans have been going through a lot of challenge. If you look into energy shortage, if you look into the pandemics that we have had prior to COVID, people have become very resilient. It means we have the potential to be more innovative in terms of new changes that are required. Because we don't have legacy infrastructural issues where a lot of companies or countries actually have to now go on cloud because they have invested a lot in a lot of expensive hardware in the past. So with this all coming in place, the continent expects to offer a lot of opportunities for digital space. And what makes it so beautiful, because like I said this morning, when we started, everybody was laughing at like, why would you do that in Ethiopia where the image is not right, there is no internet connectivity. We could be very happy if Skype works once in a while, you know. It was really a different time, but we saw this speed of change even back in the days, and now it's going so fast, like Zweder said. So it means the combination of all components shows that the digitalization space, because it's also how do you say, cross-cutting aspect. It's not like you have only software. You need digitalization to interact with the world. You need digitalization to become more responsive to the world we are living in. And Africans should be part of it, and Ethiopians too.
Perfect. Thank you for that reflection, Noel. I mean, it's very clear that you guys started at the time and you've seen it all from the start, right? And I mean, also for people that are here during today's session, if you ever want to connect with somebody that have seen it all, I think you really do have to connect with Rahel in that sense. Maybe also I can ask Ato Fakadu and maybe everybody, if you want to contribute, please do. But maybe asking from the perspective of the government, Ato Fakadu, how do you see it? I mean, we have long-term kind of digitalization strategies of Ethiopia. This question really revolves about the comparative strategy about Ethiopia or other countries positioning itself against countries such as India, Brazil. What is the Ethiopia's take on how we can compare and compete with the world?
Thank you for the question. You know, comparing Ethiopia with the other has to be on a fair scale. One of the dimensions I would say for the comparison is the human capital, the skills, the students we have. As I said earlier during my talk, because of this digital transformation strategy, we have changed a number of things. One being, for instance, the way we see the curriculum, rather than having a student who graduate from the university on a certain skill set, like a graduate from physics will have skill on physics only. Now we have made a change that everyone who's entering to the university should have a skill related to IT and IT related aspects, so that the employment will increase, so that we'll have employees that can work in different. So because of that, and the curriculum being following the IEEE and SEM standard, I would say the skill set we are going to have in coming years will be comparable to other countries like India. Aside from that, if you take the infrastructure and connectivity, is getting better, and as already stated by one of the panelists, where we are from position perspective is convenient to the Europe and the other countries, so that you don't have to be like in a night and day shift. Rather, you can work like day in and day now together, or like a 2 hours difference with the Europe means the alignment with companies outside will be, in a full line. And that's what I think is important.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think thank you for that reflection. I think that also we want to dive a little bit deeper during the Q&A or this discussion on this youth availability and also the skills availability of this country. You did mention, and you reflected a little bit already about the infrastructure. Maybe I can redirect this question and use that bridge also to talk about this infrastructure and the recent developments and what can we expect. I myself have been around almost 5.5 years now, and I've seen massive changes in those 5.5 years. Maybe asking you as well, Zweden, being such an ambassador of this country, can you also perhaps reflect about what have you seen that has been developing, but also where do you see it moving towards?
Yeah, so and I with the risk of repeating a few of the things that already have been said, but I think the development of the infrastructure around connectivity has been obviously tremendous. I've been here since 2015, once I started my company, and look, Rahel, you've been our pioneer and our leader in the outsourcing industry in Ethiopia, and we have a lot of thanks and gratitude for that. When I started 2019, we said, look, we're going to do this with cloud in Ethiopia on a few prerequisites. We know that the economy eventually is going to be opened up with a more capitalistic way of thinking. We know that the energy production of Ethiopia is now expanding at a tremendous speed. In the next couple of years will double and triple and help create this foreign currency, but also give us reliable 100% renewable energy. We know that eventually the telco sector is going to liberalize and going to give us redundant, high quality internet. And a few of these other things. So where are we now? A few years later, Safaricom is in the market. The internet has, with small challenges, yes, but making money isn't easy, has been fairly reliable. We're doing now these Zoom calls all in Ethiopia. This is working perfectly. The Ethiopian Great Renaissance Dam is now starting to produce electricity. Ethiopia is starting to export. It is still 99% all renewable energy. So I see these things as all of this is falling into place. As all governments in the whole world, governments are always playing catch up with the private sector. That's a reality that will unlikely be changed in Ethiopia compared to the rest of the world. But we can see that the government in the last couple of years, they have now the startup proclamation. They are now recognizing the PPO sector as being a potential huge contribution to the economy, that technology can play the enabling factor. Everything which Fegade also alluded to. So I see that a lot of things have already fallen into place, but with a little bit of extra time, the building blocks will really solidify and give a great foundational opportunity here to go forward.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Zweden. I think also that being said, there are some exciting developments going on now with new entrants in the market, correct? How do you see this changing the landscape? Because beforehand, I mean, I know that 3 years ago, of course, wanting to avoid a political discussion, but at the time when it was always a bit rocky, at the time we're expecting, oh yeah, okay, perhaps the internet will be shut down just to make sure that, because that was something that happened before. But what we have seen in these last times is really a long-term visionary approach to make sure that internet interruptions are not done or being kept at the minimum at all. We have new foreign entrants coming in, also providing 5G services. Can you give the participants here a little bit of feel about what is happening now when it comes to these foreign entrants and the quality of these infrastructure services as well?
Yeah, so look, Safaricom is obviously a huge deal. And in the end, it was a very logical decision for them to come here. They're one of the largest, if not the largest, telco provider in Africa. Safaricom with M-Pesa has been the definition of transformational in Kenya. M-Pesa covering, 70% of GDP. I know Ethiopia and Kenya now with these introductions of technologies are in different stages of their development. People in Ethiopia already have a commercial bank account and can make online payments, but competition is what makes the private market interesting and keeps people developing. So Ethio Telecom, as the last monopoly until 2 years ago in the world for a serious country, now suddenly is innovating at a speed that is unbelievable. When I arrived in Ethiopia, I paid $5 for 250 MB of internet. Now I pay less for my unlimited internet bundle than I pay in the Netherlands. 1,000 birr, which is 20 euros. I mean, that happened in the last 2 years. Now, Ethio Telecom has been forced to bring 5G in because Safaricom is also going to do it. 5G is going to help Ethiopia move with a lightning speed. We must not forget that the disadvantage of not having had the technological advancements is the advantage that we have today, that we can leapfrog. Something that I didn't talk about today is that Nedanko, we work on talent, but we work also on digital twins, which is the metaverse. We are going to do a pilot with water in Addis Ababa, which in 2 years then will be more technologically advanced than the technologies we use in the Netherlands for water. I mean, that says a lot what kind of possibilities that gives. And we can leapfrog on many kind of different things. There's now the 30 new banking licenses that have been given out with the potential for 40% investment from foreign investors. Well, next step will be banking licenses for international banks. If you add the opening up technology space, all the infrastructure is there, suddenly you will have international banks that can bring international financing. Then the world is your oyster, because look, there's a reason that in the Netherlands, we have everything, but there's also 18 million people that also have everything and have had that for a long time. Crystallized market. Here, anybody that comes for the first time to Ethiopia says, my goodness, I can already come up with 20 new business ideas in half an hour. Well, can you imagine if having all these opportunities, but then suddenly having all the infrastructure and the ecosystem behind you to move this forward? So I'm extremely optimistic, and we know that there's challenges, but especially in the technology space, the future is clear and very optimistic. So I'm excited.
Thank you, Zweden. Thank you, Zweden. Well, using that again, you are mentioning that this infrastructure opens up and catalyzes many new initiatives and many new opportunities. And I think Atofagado also reflected on e-governance. We talk about fintech. We are talking about e-commerce. Perhaps using that bridge as well to ask you, Thijs and Lensa, as well to reflect, because of course you're in the entrepreneurship landscape. You're seeing these kind of, this kind of activities and these bubbles to actually really move on towards new initiatives, right? Can you perhaps also reflect a little bit about what do you see in the landscape? What kind of initiatives and what kind of subsectors are developing in the broad digitalization landscape when it comes to e-governance, e-commerce, etc.? What do you see really what is happening, and also what kind of opportunities do you really foresee there? I think that Lensa's microphone is still not working. Thijs, could you perhaps reflect?
Sure. Yeah. So on what is currently happening, like in the digital ecosystem. So a few years ago, you saw the rise of ride apps, for example, right? Where ride was really the first one, along with apps like FedEx.
So this
and
is
then you all
the Uber alternative, right? The
Uber,
ride services.
Exactly. So ride-hailing services in Addis Ababa. And then you also got delivery of food with Deliver at This, for example, or Yetten delivery, etc. Now what you're seeing is that these kinds of apps and these kinds of services are also venturing into other areas as well, where you're seeing, for example, that they're providing services for packages, for electricians and other labor that is necessary, and also not only delivery of food, but also delivery of groceries and other relevant products. And I think what you're quite quickly seeing in Ethiopia is that demand and supply of both goods, so food, groceries, other things, as well as services, so services for transportation of goods, transportation of people, is very quickly finding each other. This also kind of ties into what Rahel was saying, where we are going towards worldwide a gig economy. right? And where we are seeing that production of goods and production of services is finding each other in a very different way with the use of technology than before. So what I'm really seeing in the future is that this will grow to other areas in Ethiopia as well. That what you will see is that a lot of day laborers will access these platforms and provide their services, be it services for electricians, be it services in delivery of goods, etc., be it teachers or whatever. And that demand for these services and also products and supply will find each other on digital platforms. And this is growing at a tremendous speed because, as Rahel was saying, this is what the entire world is going towards. So a lot of these platforms are already existing. And then also tying into what Zweder was saying, there's immense appetite in Ethiopia to grow the economy, to grow the platforms that tie these this demand and the supply of goods and services together. So wrapping up, what I would say is that the gig economy is I think very much a future also in Ethiopia, and a lot of these digital platforms will catalyze that development, and value will also very much be shared in these platforms where people can also be paid through digital currency in their wallets, have a profile, and supply their services and supply their goods on these different platforms.
Yeah, thank you, Thijs. I mean, I do want to move towards the whole talent and linking this human capital basically also to these demands. But before we do that, because you're so much in the entrepreneurship landscape, you're reflecting that so much is happening, right? It's not only, it doesn't necessarily mean reinventing the wheel. It's also working basically on concepts that are already existing elsewhere. And these entrepreneurs, Ethiopian entrepreneurs, jumping onto these opportunities, tailoring it, contextualizing, and making it also Ethiopian and serving basically the massive market of 120 million people here in this country. To what extent is that also open for foreign investment? And do you already see connections, foreign entrants, making that link with the Netherlands? What kind of opportunities are there as well for partnerships and collaborations and tapping into those resources and opportunities?
Well, in a general sense, the Ethiopian market is very much opening up, of course, where we're seeing, the entrance of Safaricom, for example. And I think there's tremendous opportunity for foreign investment. But I also see that from a governmental perspective, Ethiopia is also careful about attracting this investment and doing it in such a way that it really benefits the Ethiopian economy and that it benefits the Ethiopian people, and that it also makes use of the local talent that is available, which I think in the long run is the way that you grow a country sustainably. So in terms of banking, in terms of financial services, in terms of promoting export, there's a lot of opportunities, and it is also very clear that this is the direction that Ethiopia is going to. And there's an immense pool of extremely talented, very high educated people who speak perfect English, who have a very international view of the world, who are hungry to develop themselves, to develop their country, and who are also hungry to attract that investment. And this is also why, as Venture Meta, we have such a strong focus on attracting investment, on having that financial literacy, and being able to attract capital to grow your company. Yeah. And definitely there's a lot of opportunity there, be it from a local perspective to service these 120 million people that you were referring to, but also internationally. I think with the rise of, for example, Chapa, who provide services so that people can very easily export their products to any country all over the world and get paid for it. these kinds of services are gonna really open up the floodgates, I think, for exporting products, but also attracting investment to grow companies.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, I'm really looking forward to this positive floodgate in that sense. You are mentioning indeed a talented and also an immense pool of eager people. In that sense, Ato Fakadu, I would like to ask you as well, because during your presentation, you started reflecting as well about this talent pool, about these universities, this talent that comes available. Can you perhaps also reflect more about what is happening now as well, and how does this ecosystem also facilitate this talent pool? And maybe it's also better to keep that as an open conversation, also where I can ask Rahel as well to reflect on her experiences and also what you see there in the future.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's take the universities. A few years back, the universities were giving courses related to hard science, but recently, you can say almost all universities are giving courses related to skill and skill development, in which IT and ICT is part of it. Another is from the government side. We are working mainly on STEM-related courses, science, technology, and innovation, which is a key point for the talent pool. Another is the notion of TVET education, which is about skill. Again, from that you can really see that the country is working harder to create a pool of experts that can work not only for the government, but also not only inside the country, but also for the others. We can go in line with the observation of TICE, in which we are working harder so that the graduates will work internally and as well outside. Thank you for raising this question.
Thank you, Mr. Fakadu, for that reflection. Yeah, I think that also, Rahel, perhaps it would also be as a last question as well. You were, of course, having a lot of experience as well with how this skill has been developing. I think you've seen many gaps as well, but you've also seen a lot of growth in that regard. Can you perhaps also reflect from your end about what still needs to be done, but also in what area it's developing now?
Yes, thank you. It's a good question, actually. One of the reasons we started a training company in 2013 was because we hired people from universities with their highest grade. They are high performers, they are IT graduates and students. And we assumed everything would have been lost. I mean, would have been easy for us to serve our international clients. But what we noticed was people don't come on time, people don't find teamwork important, people don't have business ethics. The simplest thing that we assumed to be served by the universities as such. So we were challenged, and we started our training internally, and then we launched the training company because we saw a lot of other companies were dealing with soft skills related issues. And this is something that had been forgotten in the education system in Ethiopia. And I'm happy to hear from Mr. Fakadu that there is an attempt made towards improving this skill set, but I think there is much more needed. The 21st century skills are much different from what we needed. We thought we needed in 10 years ago. Any skill that you learn today is absolute in 5 years. That's a given. So the education system, and that also companies or other organizations working on skill development have to keep up the pace to support the growth of these young professionals coming into the market to understand what is perceived to be very important. Now, in our case, communication skills is very, very important. So you will have to understand how fragile it is if you don't inform your client on time about change. So it means communicating as simple as having a proper writing skills in communicating per email, or have a phone call, and make sure that you feel you are heard. There is a safe space created for people to actually also provide feedback needed. It's very important to have a team spirit, and also for a lot of Dutch companies coming to in Ethiopia not understanding the culture gap is that in Dutch we are very direct, in Ethiopia we are very shy. So how do you make sure that we actually have a blended knowledge that is serving the global space, is a place where you continuously develop the leadership skills of young professionals in your team in general. I hope it covered your questions.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rahel. No, and that's also, I think it's also nice to see how R&D Group, apart from, of course, having this whole talent pool being available, that there are also opportunities there to also, make sure that all the skills are continuously updated to keep track as well of the fast-paced developments, not only in Ethiopia, but of course, across this landscape globally. So thank you again for that.
Thank you.
So thank you again, all panelists as well, for your reflections. With that being said, I would like to close our panel discussion and move towards the wrap up of today's session. So thank you again for your contributions. And thank you everybody also for asking your questions and also joining today's session. Now, what can you expect from us now? At least personally, I'm looking back to an interesting discussion, and I'm also seeing that there is quite a bit of interest in this sector. So we are hopeful that this is going to be the kickoff of a series of these kind of discussions, perhaps where we can do a deep dive on certain subsectors, such as fintech, e-governance, e-commerce, all these things that have been mentioned. But all depends on your interest. So as such, we will, after this webinar, we will share the recording, and we will follow up as well with you with a survey. Please fill in this survey to not only express how you experienced today's session, but also to express your interest in Ethiopia. So what we are really here for today and also for the future is trying to help you to get going and to get more Ethio-Dutch business connections. So when you explicitly indicate that you would like to be supported, we will reach out to you personally and also try to see whether we can help you with your next steps. And that's what we call here the business development. So again, thank you for that from our end, from Trade. Thank you, speakers. And then I would like to move towards Mrs. de Giest and ask her from the Netherlands Embassy to officially close today's session.
Thank you, Sander, for facilitating a wonderful webinar today, and also the participants of this webinar. I would like to say everything that has been said, mentioned is very much insightful. And as Ambassador highlighted it in his speech, this sector is really important for us. But also, as a follow-up, I would like to mention two things. One, please, I would like to refer you back to the surveys that has been mentioned by Sander, because it gives us kind of an indication of what are your interests and how you experienced this session. But also the second one, we also have, as you may, development programs that we are supporting empowerment, skill development of young people in Ethiopia. So if you have specific questions, please reach out to us on our economic affairs email address, which I will be sharing soon. I would like to thank you all. It has been really interesting and inspiring discussion. I would like to thank Rahel, Sverre, and Thijs for sharing your experiences. We have learned a lot from your experiences, and thank you all for participants for making it your time, sharing your insights, and this is what I have for now.
Thank you, de Giest, for closing today's session. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Please fill in the survey, and I'm looking forward to host you next time during the next webinar. Have a nice day.